Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of Masquerade, a Korean movie from 2012 that stars Byung-hun Lee. Now the story was inspired by the novel The Prince and the Pauper and is as follows. The 15th ruler of Korea's Joseon Dynasty, played by Byung-hun Lee, orders his Secretary of Defense, played by Seung-ryong Ryoo, to find a doppelganger in order to avoid the constant threat of assassination. Because he's in constant fear of being poisoned or killed in some way, and the king becomes paranoid. And he starts to cause some problems, and he's starting to lose it a little bit mentally here. So he's like, listen, you need to find a doppelganger, someone who looks like me, to take my place at times. You know what I mean? Just to protect me. So the Secretary of Defense finds a lowly comedian, okay, in the public, also played by Byung-hun Lee, so he looks very similar to the king. And he's hired, okay, to take the king's place during certain evenings. But eventually, the king is poisoned, so the comedian must temporarily fill the role of the king and actually rule the kingdom with some assistance from the king's confidants. So it's kind of a secret. You know, the king gets poisoned and only a few people know about it, and they put this comedian in his place in the hopes of just taking his place for a while until the king gets better from his poisoning. So Masquerade was a box office hit in its home country, and it earned a plethora of awards. And after watching the movie, you will understand why. Byung-hun Lee convincingly plays the role of both the king and the comedian. So from his facial expressions to the way he talks, how he stands and carries himself, you know, Lee is able to build almost like an acting design for each character specifically. And it really does seem like you're watching two entirely different people who happen to look the same. This is arguably Lee's best performance of his entire career. And I do not say that lightly. This is really, really up there, I think. So it's pretty special. Seung-ryong Ryoo, also known as The Man, is great as a secretary who guides and mentors this comedian to becoming, more convincing in his stand-in role for the king. Ryoo's character plays it rather serious for much of the film, but he somehow comes off as a very likable person. This actor is great. I love him. And then we get Hto-joo and Eun-kyung in supporting female roles, and they're also quite good in this. The casting in this movie is really impressive. I mean, every single actor is just in top form. They're on their A game. And they're also supported by a very well-written script. Our protagonist has some very good interactions with all of these side characters. And each side character really kind of has their own special moments to shine with this comedian stand-in character. And that really adds to like the complexity of the film, to the drama and the character development as well. It's all very, very nicely executed. This definitely has an emotional resonance to it. There were certain times during the latter half where I was getting, a little bit teary-eyed. So they do a good job of building that emotional connection with the characters. There are a few humorous moments in this, which work very well, I think. They're kind of peppered in. Gives the characters some color. Makes the viewer care for them. The main conflict involves the king's brother-in-law, who has rubbed a lot of people within the palace the wrong way with his ideals and the statements that he makes. And there's political pressure to put this man to death. Now, the king himself is contemplating that decision, despite the fact that some evil people will benefit from it. And there's also a bit of suspense that's earned because the comedian is forced to deal with these like significant decisions when he stands in for the king. And he also needs to learn like the proper etiquette and fool everyone in the palace into thinking he is the king. So there's a lot of, different angles in this film that are explored in pretty interesting ways. In terms of production values, the Korean film industry is very consistent with these types of period films. Masquerade is no different. Costumes, set designs are colorful, very nice to look at. It's cool just to see like the different locations and buildings, how people lived back then. And some of the daily routines inside the palace are pretty interesting. I especially thought the toilet procedures were quite amusing. There are a few scenes where the king, or possibly only one, well, there's only one or a few scenes where the king character interacts with the comedian on the same screen, which means that Byung-hun Lee had to interact with himself. And I thought those moments were perfectly executed. I'm not exactly sure how they pulled off that special effect, but it was convincing. I thought it was solid. I like the ending, too. My only gripe is that when the movie ends, the screen goes blank, and then they do one of those, like, post-film, like, sentences, a few sentences at the end to say, like, what happened in real life, like, a few years later or years later. I don't really like it when films do that. Like, just end the film. You know, if I want to know, like, what happened to these guys in real life, I'll look it up online. I don't really like it when movies end like that, usually. So, that part annoyed me a little bit, but it's a minor gripe. So, Masquerade, it's a pretty fantastic film. I think everyone should watch this. Like, 90% of the people who watch this are going to like it. So, you may as well just watch it. It's currently available on Amazon streaming in the United States. You can also find it on physical media. And as always, I'll see you next time.